Welcome to the Charleston Marketing Podcast, brought to you by the Charleston AMA and broadcasting from our friends at Charleston Media Solutions Studios. Thanks to our awesome sponsors at CMS, we get to chat with the cool folks making waves in Charleston. From business and art to hospitality and tech, these movers and shakers choose to call the Lowcountry home. They live here, work here, and make a difference here. So what's their story? Let's find out together.
So here I am in the studio for Silicon Harbor Hot Take with Will Horn of GDNA. He is a technologist, an entrepreneur, a master of cloud architecture. Welcome, Will.
Thank you, Stan. Yeah, it's great to be here today.
Nice. So let's just dive right into it. Tell listeners, what is GDNA and what do you do?
Wow. Yeah. So that's a fun question. Usually I'll answer that question now by saying that we're the transformation company for the Agentic Cloud. There's many terms inside of there that probably require explanation. So we help small to medium businesses and startups. Early in our 3-year history, we help small to medium businesses and startups transform using cloud technology. And we do a lot of that using AI and agentic practices now.
So give me an example. Let's pretend someone has heard of the cloud. They understand that your files are stored there and you retrieve them, but they don't know what cloud architecture means to a business. So give us an example maybe of both an SMB and an enterprise level company, and then what would cloud architecture mean to them?
Sure. So maybe we can do it for three. We'll do it for startups, SMBs, and enterprises. There's maybe before we jump into it, just why cloud is always good. So the cloud over the last maybe 10 to 15 years has democratized a huge amount of advanced technology for any of those types of businesses, for any type of business or nonprofit governmental entity. What the cloud has done is driven transformation by allowing us to access advanced technologies like machine learning or the strategic use of data inside of an organization, or just providing better user experience like hosting front ends or building better user experiences that are more anticipatory of customer needs. So in a startup, when we go to the cloud, that being said, when we talk about why people use the cloud, in a startup, another reason for cloud is operational efficiency. We can actually latch the sort of cost of goods sold or per unit cost of a solution. SaaS is a solution that we must sell in some form of per unit. So effectively in the cloud, we're able to use the most efficient version of technology purchasing and procurement to build solutions. So for a startup, it means we can build very nimble, agile, lightweight, proving prototypes or architectures. For a small to medium business, oftentimes they're looking to transform legacy operations. These are established companies with customers. So they're looking to transform and expand their business. So they want to digitally move their operations into, technology more. They want to transform and grow their business. So they're able to then do that at a lower cost, oftentimes with assistance from the cloud provider. And then the enterprise is a scaled up version of that. The enterprise needs to maintain market velocity. They need to innovate to find new use cases to continue growing. So oftentimes they're looking to the cloud again to make their technology spend as efficient as possible, minimize their labor spend as an input, and then transform technology at the same time to go open new markets or build new products, depending on what their use cases are. So for anyone, I'm sorry, I know that's quite a long answer and pretty complex in itself with complex examples, but for anybody going to cloud, usually the advantage is in business growth and velocity, like innovation velocity, strategic agility, and sort of cost and people efficiency.
Yeah, I'm old enough to remember when it was a big deal that Adobe changed from sending you disks that you uploaded to a cloud-based subscription model or a SaaS platform, and people thought, is this going to work? And of course it did, but they weren't as familiar with cloud architecture. So let's dive in for a minute on your specific role as an AWS partner. I know you worked for AWS. You are a partner now. Why does a business need a consultant to come in and guide them through either the migration or the transformation internally of their software suite?
Yeah, thank you. It's quite complex. The simplest answer to the question is these are multidisciplinary problems that require a lot of comprehension. The surface area of transformation or modernization of any business entity that exists is complex. The same as founding a startup. I mean, you and I have had conversations about what it takes to get a business from vision to actual commercialized with customers. So I think as cloud architecture lends itself to building very early and scalable patterns that become, easy to distribute, easy to get compliance. GRC concerns become completely contained inside of there. So a lot of times, I'm sorry, I may have dropped part of your question here.
Oh, no, not at all. I like this where you're going now. My friend Jack Harvey calls it from sketch to scale.
Yeah.
And so you're back of a napkin, you're here, and I know you assist with that transformation. Let's dive into a minute. Before we jumped on the pod today, you were explaining what I thought was a very astute, interesting term beyond minimum viable product. If you want to share with us what that minimum viable journey looks like and how you've adopted that as kind of a term of art as your approach.
Yeah. Sorry, and maybe this is a good way for me to tell our listeners how GDNA actually goes into action and helps customers find value, because I think that was your question for me last that I dropped. So the minimal viable journey is it's a more explicit concept than say a minimal viable product or say a core value proposition or a core profit formula or something like that. And it sort of emerged from my 20, 30 odd years of technology innovation here as a way to tie off, technological value generation through the use of data to business objectives. And so a lot of times when we envision a solution, whether it's an enterprise modernization effort with, 5 to 10 years of activity, or it's a simple startup that wants to sell, one service like scheduling a meeting to people, we can envision that there is one or more explicit value propositions in there, and now we can translate that using something like minimal viable journey modeling down to an explicit set of transitions of data through the organization that will either gain or lose value across that. And of course, we always want to gain value for the end customer, for the user, of that customer. So MVJ gave us words and logic in which we could properly segment, but both segment and build architecture, and then align that architecture to the actual business outcomes, including scaling formulas or capital inputs or anything else.
Right. So that value prop could be based around just creating more efficiencies, reducing friction, or actual ROI on the end product.
Right. And so a lot of times we generalize this type of problem to business outcomes like revenue growth or, cost deflation, these types of outcomes, or just building net new features if we have an innovator's dilemma and we need to reapply or move over into another market. So the MVJ gives us a way to take like a thesis and define that using sources and explicit data progression and business process, and then talk about the potential outcomes for that thesis, and then go very easily align it to technology architecture and deployment and understand.
I like it. So let's geek out on data for a moment.
Yeah.
I am a novice in this area, but my understanding and what I've kind of realized lately is that data traditionally existed in silos, like across a PDF or a call or an SMS or that sort of thing, and you had to find ways to understand that data, derive insights out of it, but it was also the architecture of it was in fields or charts or things like that. Now we're entering an era where AI and especially LLMs is more about conversational data that's in context, and it's kind of a paradigm shift on how we view those sets. Is that something that you're excited about, that disruption? Have people not quite figured that out yet? Is it maddening to your clients? What does that look like when they're trying to really understand their data and maybe build a decision matrix around that?
It's contextually, I love this question because you've captured kind of the complexity of the conversation in your question. Because most people are really excited about AI. We're starting to see the first sort of wave of Horizon 1 solutions coming back and saying, okay, well, enterprises don't have data that's ready for AI, and we might have heard that 7 or 8 years ago with machine learning, just pure machine learning process. So it's fascinating to me. A lot lot of our customers starting out in startup and SMB, a lot of our customers have less processes and less complexity, so they have less data requirements. There's so many ways to talk about this. We could talk about data valuation, or strategic data process, or how much data we need to solve a problem is sort of where I'm going. So our customers will find they ask us a question. Sometimes they're very prepared for this. They've had years of history of operating like an RFP response process, so they have a well-defined process and they know the inputs and the various data sources they need, and we can digitalize that very quickly and pretty efficiently and have 6 or 8 agents work on that as an automated new concern. Or sometimes they find that they literally have not even thought about this question. So it's stratified probably across customer maturity in terms of technology, really cloud technology maturity more than I would say just IT maturity, because most people eventually will rotate into a whole other perspective. What we've done is transform. We had an education customer last year. I think I shared this one with you. It was a transition success planning for special needs students. And that customer gave us a great quote. They told us we moved them from being a curriculum company to being SaaS company. So we know we can help people transform models, business models, and things like that. In doing that, we found that their understanding of the use of data was like very, very nascent. So we did a lot of education along that way. So as soon as we do that transformation, the next part is the customer will say, can I scale that and commercialize this as a business? So even some of our early SMB agentic customers are now asking, can you platform this and help me scale it? Can you redeploy it in a new geography? Can you help me reapply this on a slightly different use case? So what I find, and sorry, I'll get back on the data point, is that people, once they start to understand how data works and how the flow of data generates value, rather than a sort of notional conceptualization of it, then they'll start finding these use cases, and the conversation becomes much more valuable, and it starts to become more explicit there. And it's just fascinating as a pattern to share here today, but it sort of unlocks this strategic data value conversation, and then usually it's like everything I got a little more, so I want a lot more of that. I had a customer yesterday ask me if we could commercialize their application, and then right off of that they asked me to build a data lake just to sell the data, right? And and we see that pattern, app into platform quite often. Yeah.
Well, let's go down the agentic tool rabbit hole for a second. So my understanding of agents is that they're not just bots or something there that's reacting to you. They can actually use tools and deploy those within that environment. Is that how you see it?
So the agentic, just to kind of back into this a little bit, the agentic conversation became real, say, last year. We started to see the emergence in late 23 of the agentic language, and then the industry and market started to center around it. There's some fascinating things in here. There's not a lot of standards. We still debate how agents will talk to each other. There's not a lot of architectural standards for this yet. Like we have TOGAF and other ways to be enterprise architects if we want to be, but here in the agentic world, basically you have just open competition between some of the larger LLM platform players. Some of the larger hyperscalers are also making those bets, and so it's kind of fascinating just to watch everybody try to sort this out and develop good architecture. I mean, you
so Salesforce, Microsoft, Twilio are all
right, and everybody and every SaaS company has an agentic tool now, and is promising agentic efficiency, and there's a whole lot of conversation about I find fascinating about where the agents operate. Whether they're in the stack or, sitting outside of the stack. So you're saying, is the agent in Salesforce, is Agentforce doing this, or will I build a custom stack of tools that does this? And so if you kind of look at all that in your question and you say, well, where does the tooling actually matter? Mostly it matters where you need the agents to attach to your data and do magical things for your business. And that's what probably matters in this conversation. And so how fast we can get to the right answers for that becomes a matter of business prioritization. Do we have the right processes envisioned or known that we can transform? So, there's a lot of assessment and analysis. And then it comes down to how quickly can we get to this sort of working state of proving that the agents work. Part of your answer was, or part of your question was, will the agentic realm, do all the business? We're working on like very small, early autonomous business models so that we can sort of prove this out for small nonprofits and SMB and startup use cases. One of the problems we see in early stage startup is the founder has like 20% of, the 100% of requirements to get the business to market. So we could envision, a lot of people use hubs or, business line, sort of group line functions of agents. So you have a marketing hub or a GTM hub that's doing sourcing and customer acquisition for you, right? And the human is still overseeing that decisioning ultimately. So we're probably, I have one example that's probably 80% of the way towards being able to make its own choices. It communicates with us in a Slack channel about what it wants to do right now. But fascinatingly enough, I think the point that we're going to here early is, can I just transform some of my work into better versions of automation? And the agents tend to look like these integrations of, structured data, unstructured data, and a little bit of that intelligence that we get. And I think this was probably a more valuable part of the answer, is like the LLMs have brought us access to general intelligence that now we can attach directly to our data rather than going through a third-party tool always. Right?
So, say I'm a founder and I have a post-revenue company. I've built some software, but with the models taking dramatic leaps every 5-6 months and the incredible number of tools being made and released, and I'm drinking from the fire hose of that. How do I kind of get a handle on it and maybe break that into chunks so I understand what's most relevant to my business? And I know this question is heavily dependent on the type of business and the product or the service and that sort of thing. But I'm just trying to get a handle on it. I've got 15 e-news in my inbox from everybody on the planet.
Right. I'm
watching, Lex Friedman and Lenny, and I'm like blowing up. How do I understand this? How do you get your head around it?
We all have a version of this. I get 10 LinkedIn messages a day from, lead gen companies, right?
Oh, yeah.
And we have a lead gen engine we built. So the answer is, we've solved this. Why would we do it? But we're all facing this. And so, it's not a matter of not knowing, but I usually think we need first awareness and sort of fluency of the common language. This probably more so for me than any other technology I've endured in my life or technological change is moving faster. I think we all feel that way. Everybody talks about the speed and the rate of innovation here and learning. And like you said, so models change, we get new functionality, and the functionality mimics our brain. So it's quite challenging for us to absorb it all that quickly. So I think getting out, it's going to sound kind of pedantic, but getting out and talking to people, we do show and tell, we do meetups, we do things like this, just getting conversant in the language and then understanding where you might use it. I saw somebody with a book the other day called like the AI Informed Leader, and the person was telling me that, the key to the book was that it was informing for them where they might use AI, because a lot of people are not thinking about how do I make my business faster and what am I doing? What am I doing on a day-to-day basis? I write emails, or I write emails I don't want to, that are complex or something, or I do these certain things, or I plan trips where it can affect every phase of our business. So I think the first thing is just understanding the common language and how you might engage with it. And then quite honestly, find a partner. Like after all that conversation and general learning, you still need to know the parts of it that you don't know. And, in my business, I tend to be very myopic, and I have a lot of experience to lean on, but other people often fill in, all those gaps. And I think we take a partner first approach, and, it's really there for people to come and ask questions. So I know there's other businesses like ours, and I think that's the key, is to find somebody who's done it and ask the question. If it's an independent contractor, or you find a partner, but say, hey, you've solved a problem like this in my industry. Tell me what you saw. Tell me if you might help me. Even if you don't want to pay them to do that, just try to get the information, because the problems are being solved in so many different ways. Like we're all kind of working on the same thing in a million different ways right now because of the lack of emergent standards and language for us.
Well, I love how you brought it back home locally. So let's pivot to that for a minute and talk about the Charleston ecosystem. You're very involved with Charleston Hacks and the show and tell event. Full disclosure, you're a sponsor of of Dig South Tech Summit this year. Thank you very much.
Yeah, love to be a part of that this year.
And we're here on the Charleston American Marketing Association show as a segment of that with Silicon Harbor Hot Take. So what's your hot take on how can people plug in locally? What can they bring to the table, things that they can offer, what can they also receive and get out of this environment, and maybe touch on a few things we're missing in Charleston and how we might address those to enhance that overall ecosystem.
I think ecosystem building is interesting as an activity. Thank you for engaging in it. It's complex and hard. We have a lot of support here now, and I mean, I've been here 3 years. I know there are many other people that are more focused and more engaged with building the ecosystem, and it's beautiful to see. So thank you for Dig South and others in the community for building our home. The Harbor Center is a great place for startups in this activity. I mean, we've been fortunate, to engage with Doug and Charleston Hacks and find a lot of momentum in bringing people to how does startup work? How does this innovation life cycle really happen? We're always looking for more capital. I know you and I both have contacts, and everybody, there's probably 12 of us I can name that are thinking about how to bring early stage risk capital. A lot of times, we think, what do we do after the event? So, if I'm just thinking generally to encourage people, there's a ton of events. There's our Charleston Hacks events, there's meetup events, there's events at the Harbor Center, there's Dig South, there's large events. We had a large event last fall. Thank you for attending and helping us. But ultimately, there's a huge amount of community interaction inside of the tech community. And then I think one of our opportunities is to bring ourselves into other areas of the community where we're not, right? And I've suggested that with Doug and Charleston Hacks, that we attend Seaweed or the Food and Wine Festival, and we start bringing digital into those realms. And because there are people everywhere that want to learn and solve their own problems is probably the easiest thing I can say.
I love that. I mean, we tried that in the early days, and sometimes it was, a jackalope. Right. strange animal is appearing when you or a digital centaur.
And that's it. People look at you like you're the Martian. Right?
Digital centaur just arrived, and
that's probably the I want to go back to that now that you gave me the chance. Just be brave and be humble. Probably whether it's stupidity or a learned habit. I can cast aside my imposter syndrome and self-centered fear and meet anybody and ask for help now. Right.
Right. I love it.
And that's the thing that my very personal mission. We have a nonprofit that we've instantiated. We have a community leader, Brian Rowe, who's a great person. I hope everybody can meet. But Global Digital Access Collaborative, because we need to bring more after effect to our events. So that my personal thing here this year is that we won't just have events; that we have events that we take away and do more work from with each other, right? And so I think that's probably the encouragement. Yeah, we need a platform. We need something to glue together, and I think many people are contributing, so we just all need to keep doing it, right?
I love it.
We'll build that intensity, and all those other capital, all those people are here. Capital will come, right?
Yeah. So, breaking out the magic 8 ball or your crystal ball, what does this community look like in terms of the technology sector, say 2 years from now?
Yeah, it's crazy. It feels very different. I don't know how this is for you. I should flop this question back at you, but it feels different for me. Just probably my first year here, I was just kind of bobbling around. Probably 6 months in, we started. So it feels so different for me in terms of intensity. We've got multiple AI startups out of here now. We've got good SaaS companies. We're starting to see capital come in and help early stage companies. So that's all positive. But my hope is within 2 to 3 years, we have multiple sort of centers here. I think you've got 3 or 4 geographies where, there's early stage startups. So we at least have 1 or 2 of those as merge as real sort of locusts of this activity. And there's capital, there's a convergence of commerce, like capital and startup activity in government in there. I mean, I think, we have the Tech Hubs grant that's coming in to sort of spark industry. I just want us to continue to see investment both in capital and digital here. That's kind of the big thing. If we continue to see the capital come and we make the investments in digital, I guess as we'll have, between the MUSC Innovation District and the other emergent things here, that we're going to have a really good time. We'll have big events. My hope is that Tech Week rivals, some of the bigger ones, in these tier cities. I mean, I'll go to Philly Tech Week this year. We'll do an event there as well. Yeah. So I think we're, I've understood there how, that one grew and what happened between, Drexel and Wharton there. So I think, we have all the pieces, we just need to keep going.
Yeah. For any of our listeners, Charleston Tech Week will be June 8th through 12th this year. Go to charleston.techweek.com or .org and submit your event. It is free to submit an event. It's a decentralized festival. Think of it that way. So, Will, how do people get in touch with you, and why should they get in touch with you? What are some of the big reasons that you're kind of a first point for them?
Yeah. So a lot of times people will come to us to help understand what might be helpful in digital technology for their business. And I know that is probably its own definition itself. But, if you're wondering how to grow your business using AI, if you're wondering how to transform a legacy business using any form of technology that doesn't involve, operating on-premise data centers is one way to think about it. If you have general, I have an idea and I need to turn that into a reality, and, people are, you have people amassing around you as a startup founder. But, people can reach us, gdna.io, gdna.ai. I am just Will at GDNA, WILL at gdna.io. But, we're on LinkedIn. We're on the internet. I enjoy going to A Million Cups now. We've started to bridge out. We'll be at Dig South and Tech Week. We're super excited about that. Any Charleston Hacks event I'm at, we do show and tell now. We plan to do that monthly. Show and tell is great for people if you're just vibe coding or thinking about something and want to come out and see how this happens. Come on out. We'll do one of those next Wednesday at the Starlight Lounge at 6 p.m. On Rivers Avenue. And but yeah, I mean, get in touch if you have technology ambiguity and you want to build a growing business. That's probably the right answer there.
I love it. Well, Will Horn, founder of GDNA, thank you so much for being on Silicon Harbor Hot Take. I am your host, Stanfield Gray. We're very honored to be here. Thank you to Charleston AMA for welcoming us into the fold of their pod city, pod environment. What do you guys think? I mean, what is this? Pod universe? Pod universe. Awesome. Podverse. There we go. I like that. Into the comma podverse. Anyway, thank you so much for having us. Thank you, Will.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, AMA and the Charleston chapter of the AMA. And I look forward to more of this. Thank you all so much.